Hello everyone. Welcome to the webinar. We'll just wait for a few more minutes and then start. Okay, we'll get started. So just as a heads up that this is being recorded. All right, thanks everyone for joining the webinar. So this first webinar is on the theme of Introduction to AI for Law Studies. And so if we have a second one later today on AI for legal work. So in case that was the one that you wanted to attend if you're a lawyer, please join that one instead, because this one that we're about to have is tailored for law students. All right, we're just gonna get started now then. Okay, I hope you can see my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. All right, yeah. So the agenda for today is we're gonna start with an introduction to the basics of AI in the legal industry, and I'll start with that. And Victor would do a live demo of Eskwai, our AI legal assistant, and Bonsrah will do a practical session on integrating AI into your studies. And we have Kirsten, who is a law student, who would also do a session on how he uses AI for his studies, and then we'll do a Q&A. So my name is Jojo, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Kwame AI, which is the AI startup organizing this webinar. Okay, so for this webinar, would mostly be using Eskwai, which is our AI legal assistant for a lot of the examples that would be going through today. I think I'm just gonna have everyone mute themselves by default. Okay, all right. Okay, so yes, like I said, I'll start with like a primal introduction to explain AI in the legal industry. And just as a heads up, I'm not a lawyer. I don't have any legal training, and so if I end up butchering any legal terminologies, or just bear with me. My background is in AI, so just as a heads up. All right, so ChatGPT's arrival in November 2022 was a lot of people's introduction to what AI is. And for a lot of people, when they think about AI, they think about ChatGPT, for better or worse. And with the arrival of generative AI tools like ChatGPT also came along, various eye-catching headlines like this about how AI is going to take the jobs of lawyers, and also fears around the use of AI in the legal industry. So actually just this month, a lawyer in South Africa got into trouble for submitting fake references. And a lawyer also in New York, and there have been several lawyers across the world that have been submitting fake references, fake case citations using tools like ChatGPT. And so there are some fears around the use of AI in the legal industry. However, there have also been encouragement about the potential for AI to make the work of lawyers more productive or efficient. And so encouragement to use and learn how to use AI for legal work. So we did a survey as part of this registration, and these are the results from students. And it's actually nice to see that a great percentage of you are already like using tools like ChatGPT for some part of your studies. And so it's nice to see that there's some eagerness to kind of integrate AI into your studies or workflows. And so that's pretty good. So today, my goal is to explain a lot of these concepts on a high level so that you leave today's webinar with a much better understanding of some of these technologies more than the average person out there. And I'll try to explain on a high level using examples from the legal space. All right, so AI, yeah. So these days, when people think about AI, it's mostly ChatGPT, but AI is much broader than that. There really isn't an agreed definition for what AI is, but I mean, I like this particular definition from IBM, which says that it's technology that enables machines to simulate human intelligence and problem solving. AI is actually not a new thing. The term was actually coined in 1956 at a summer workshop at Dartmouth College, my alma mater actually, by a mathematics professor called John McCarthy. The goal was to organize this workshop to lay the foundations for how machines can be used to simulate human intelligence. And some of these goals are laid out here, like make machines use language, solve the kinds of problems that only humans can do. And it's nice to see that so many decades later, a lot of these goals have been accomplished. So AI is actually pretty broad. There are all these sub-disciplines or aspects of AI. And some overlaps in these. But today we'll talk about three of these. I'm starting with machine learning, which is like the foundation for a lot of these aspects of AI. And if you have any questions while I'm speaking, you can put it in the chat. All right, so what is machine learning? Okay, so I like to be interactive when I'm teaching, so I'm gonna ask some questions. So please be interactive and put in the chat, or you can unmute yourself too. So we have these two scenarios. So the first one, a young man is arrested for breaking into a shop and stealing mobile phones, and the second one, a family files a lawsuit against a neighbor for encroaching on their land, claiming ownership based on land sale documents they obtained years ago. Which of these fall under civil or criminal law or yes, criminal case? You guys are the experts. I'm the layperson here. If you can put in the chat or maybe unmute yourself, or maybe raise your hand and then I can unmute you. Okay. Yes, you can go ahead. Start, don't go.
Yes, good morning, and thank you for this. I think scenario one, it's a criminal case, and scenario two is a civil case.
Okay, great. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, somebody else put in the chat. Yeah. Okay, great. So now my question to you is, how would you, if you're to, let's say, write up a process or rules for someone like, let's say me as a layperson who has no legal training to follow to categorize such legal situation as civil or criminal, what are some of the processes or rules that you suggest? Okay, I think I've made it possible for anyone to unmute themselves. So you can actually go ahead if you want to unmute yourself and say something. What are some of the things you tell me as a layperson to look out for to do this categorization?
Okay, I think you look at the act that was committed and the laws that relates to those acts.
Okay, so what are some of the things that will make me know that, oh, this is criminal or this is civil? Yes, you can go ahead. I think I don't go. Yeah.
Yeah, so I just want to build on what my colleague said. You look at the facts of the case and also consider the elements of a civil case and the elements of a criminal case. Now you juxtapose the elements of the civil case to that of the facts of the case, and also do that for the criminal, consider the elements of the criminal case to that of the facts that you have at hand. So if you notice that the elements pertaining to the facts are that of the elements of a civil case, then you would be able to tell that it is a civil case. But if you notice that the elements of the facts of the case, it's related to that of the elements of a criminal case, then you would be able to make that distinction. And I would use the scenarios here to make an example. If you look at the elements of a civil case, mostly it's between two individuals or this thing, two civil parties. Now, a young man is arrested for breaking into a shop and stealing mobile phones. Though that one too, it's what? Yes, you've stole the phone from a shop which is owned by someone. But if you look at the elements of criminal case, it has to do with crimes against the state. And stealing is a crime against the state. So if you juxtapose that element with what has happened, you can tell that, okay, scenario one is a criminal case because the act of stealing is against the state. But if you look at the second scenario, a family files a lawsuit against a neighbor for, if you also look at that, it's between two individuals. And if you look at the Criminal Code Act 29, that it's not captured as a criminal case or a crime against the state. So you would be able to tell that, okay, this is a civil case. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thanks. So just to summarize, okay, so I'll look for, so again, this is a process that me who has no training would look out for. So like you said, okay, so for criminal cases, to infer that, I'll look for things like, okay, stealing. So probably look for words like, okay, there's stealing in there. And for civil, okay, is it like between two people, right? So what are some other words that I'll probably look out for? So this is just one example. There could be a lot of different scenarios, right? And I want to be able to correctly categorize. So what are some of the other things, let's say words that I'll look out for scenario like for criminal case. What are some of the other words or maybe phrases in my description that I'll look out for? So that's say, I mean, the other yeah, you can go ahead. I think someone was speaking. I see someone's unmuted. Grace, do you want to say something?
Can I add?
Yes, sure, you can.
So some of the syllables or keywords I'll be looking out for is if there's a prosecutor and accused person, then that would tell me it's a criminal case. If there's a defendant and a plaintiff, then that should tell me that it's a civil case.
Okay. But let's assume you only have this description. You don't have more information. This case hasn't gone to court yet. It's not gone to trial. It's just like you just have this scenario. It's yet to go to court or trial. So you don't even have information about defendants or plaintiffs. You just have this description, right? So what are some of the words you'd look out for?
Okay, so scenario one, I'll be looking at breaking into, which is unlawful. And then for scenario two, I'll be looking out for encroaching on the land, which is in law in taught as trespass.
Okay. So what if, I mean, I get another scenario which is about somebody caught like committing assault or, hitting someone else, right? Right. So I'm looking for, I guess I'd have to have a bunch of other keywords to look out for, correct? So like things like maybe assault, right? Murder, right? So I'd have to have a list of all these keywords that I'd have to look out for to help me categorize every news scenario that I have. Similarly for the, I guess for to go to categorize civil, like maybe things centered around contracts, right? And keywords like that. The challenge with doing this is that let's say I want to write a program that kind of does this categorization. I'd have to have these endless list of rules that I need to write up about all these words that I have to look out for. Okay, all right. So I'd have to have these endless list of rules that I'd have to write up. And that's going to be a problem because it might not be comprehensive. You just said that I should look out for things like stealing. So what if I have a scenario that has got to do with murder? It means my rules wouldn't work for that, right? And so, so that's one of the challenges with writing up rules to try to do this kind of categorization if I was trying to build a software program to do this. And this is where machine learning comes in. So machine learning helps you, rather than write all these rules as to look for this words, look for these other words, look for these phrases, it just learns from the data automatically. And so all you have to do is you just give it a bunch of examples of legal scenarios, and then the system will just learn automatically. And so machine learning is the science and art of programming computers so that they learn from data. So in this case, you train a model using the data. So the process of the model is just the algorithm, the set of rules like being learned automatically is what we call training. So in this scenario, in this situation, like in training, I would give it a bunch of legal scenarios, let's say 50 examples for civil, 50 examples for criminal, and then the model would learn on its own, and then I'll have a certain model. And then if I get a new scenario, I'll just give it to that model, and then the model will tell me whether it's civil or criminal. And this is what we call classification. And so that's basically what machine learning is, just given a bunch of data and it learns on its own to do this kind of categorization. And obviously there could be situations that are both, civil and criminal. You can also have your model be able to learn to predict both as civil, a legal situation as both civil and criminal. So that's basically what machine learning is on a high level. All right, so next we'll talk about speech processing. So speech processing is just, so there are two key aspects. Text to speech basically takes text and then output speech. So examples like Siri and Google Assistant, and speech to text is you speak to it and then it converts that to text. So pretty straightforward. So this example is not a legal example, but I guess maybe a bit useful. So a lot of these tools do not work well for Ghanaian accents. So we have this project, Brilla AI, that's building an AI to compete in Ghana's NSMQ, National Science and Math Quiz, and we built some speech to text and text to speech. So we trained some of these models. So I'm just going to play an example pretty quickly, just to give you a sense of what speech to text is.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this demo. We are excited to have you and happy to share our work with you. Thank you once again. Hope you have a great day. Take care.
Okay, so there's an example of speech-to-text system we built, trained, and that recognizes Ghanaian accent. And then I'll show an example of a text-to-speech system that speaks with a Ghanaian accent.
Lane or in space, but more often I am a continuous curve. Who am I? One particular element out of about the 100 or so elements in the periodic table is always.
Okay, so there's an example. The text-to-speech is not that great because we didn't have a lot of data. Usually when you train models, it's good to have a lot of data, which makes it work well. So those are examples of text-to-speech and speech-to-text systems. But let's look at what its potential use case in the legal space. So one potential use case is court scribing. Right, so in courts, you have stenographers type up what's going on in there. But what if we could, have an automatic speech recognition system convert the speech to text, and so that you can have the information much more quickly than the current state of the art. So in Estonia, they actually tested and are using speech-to-text systems to have automated transcriptions of court proceedings. And this could potentially extend to other use cases like depositions or alternative dispute resolution. So, and to help make things more efficient. So that's another potential use case of speech-to-text systems in the legal industry. All right, so next, let's talk about natural language processing. So natural language processing entails using approaches to extract or analyze text, so human text, to derive some kind of meaning from it. Okay, so quickly, so keyword search is basically what a lot of search engines do right now, where you have to put in some kind of phrase, you want to find a relevant case or legislation. And this is an example I used with Google Scholar. And as you can see, it's trying to find the existence of words in there, and it doesn't really pull up relevant cases, which is one problem with a lot of these tools that use keyword search. But there's this technique called semantic search that pulls up relevant, it understands the meaning of your text and then tries to pull up relevant cases that contain or capture the meaning of the text that you have in there. And this is an example from Eskwai using semantic search. And as you can see, the top hit kind of is related to that. And so semantic search differs from keyword searching, that it kind of really captures the meaning of the text and it helps to pull up a lot more relevant cases or legislation. And that's something that we use in Eskwai. And obviously there'll be cases where you'd want to find the exact word or phrase. And so you can actually combine keyword search and semantic search to then have what we call hybrid search. And and that kind of gives you the advantages of both. And this is an example of a result for Eskwai. So this what hybrid search, keyword search, and semantic searches. Okay, so generative AI. Generative AI is the hot word these past few years. There have been these tools that have been released: Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini. So generative AI tools just basically take instructions like prompt to then generate new text, image, videos, or audios. Most of these tools do text, and it's trained. We learned what training was from a large amount of data, so text from the internet, by learning to predict what word will come next, given all the preceding words. So that's basically what these generative AI tools are doing. They are just trying to predict what is the word that will come next based on the previous words. And it can be used for things like review, drafting, and potentially legal research with a caveat. So this is an example of so let's wanted to use a generative AI tool for legal question answering. So there's a prompt that I could write. So your AI legal assistant, answer this question, think step by step, cite your source, give me a concise or straightforward answer. If you add anything else, you have a penalty of $100. So there's an example of a really good prompt. So prompt engineering is the process of refining your prompts, the instructions that you give, until you have a desired output. And there are ways to write a good prompt and a bad prompt. To start off, it's good to ask the model to take a certain role, like let's say an expert or a legal assistant. By saying it should be a legal assistant, the answers it will give me would speak in legalese or ways that it would be expected for a lawyer or like someone in the legal space, as opposed to if I said you're a marketing helper or whatever, I would speak in a different way. So it's always useful to ask it to take on a certain role and then break complex tasks into smaller tasks. As you can see, breaking them into smaller tasks. There's another technique called chain of thought prompting, where you tell the model to think step by step. And it's been shown that helps improve the quality of the answers you get. And then it's also good to give it examples. I don't have an example here. And then also giving some penalty for not following an instruction like I have here also helps to kind of get the Gen AI model or tool to give you a response in a way that you want. So, okay, I use this prompt in ChatGPT for a certain scenario, a use case. The first one's about explain what a valid offer is. And the second was a landmark case of what landmark is that defines what a valid offer. On the surface, it looks pretty good. Based on feedback we already got from the answers to this question, it looks pretty good, at least the left one. But one of the cases it cites, I actually tried to check, doesn't exist. It's a fake case, right? And on the surface, you wouldn't be able to tell unless you really cross-check. On the right one, the case it pulls up is not correct. Not only that, the case is also fake, which is one big problem with these generative AI tools. So the fact that they make stuff up, which is called hallucination. Also, it doesn't have that local contextual knowledge, such as Ghanaian cases, to provide really accurate answers. And the most significant limitation is that there's really no way to verify the claims that are being made here. And so that's one of the challenges with generative AI tools. Unfortunately, a lot of these challenges can be addressed with another technique called retrieval augmented generation, RAG for short, which basically helps ground answers in real cases. And so just on a high level, I'll explain this quickly on a high level. What you do is we want a way to save passages from our cases. So let's take cases, we break it up into different paragraphs, convert it into numbers, which is what computers understand, and then we save it somewhere. And then when a person has a question, we convert the text of the question as what's a valid offer into numbers, and then find the relevant passages using semantic search, which we already just talked about. And then we use that and pass it to our generative AI model to then generate an answer. And so by doing that, it always grounds its answer in real cases. And so this is basically what RAG is, and this is what we use in Eskwai to make sure that the answers we provide are really trustworthy. And so I put this question in Eskwai. Victor's gonna do live demos soon, so I'm not gonna do that now. But I put the question in Eskwai, and it did pull up it did go give an explanation, and as you can see, it cites the sources, which you can go and read, and then it posts up the actual landmark case that talks about define what an offer is, and then the other question about explaining Wiganin cases, it cites real cases. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for RAG. So that's a technique that helps address some of the limitations of generative AI tools. And so generally, if you want to use tools for studies or work, it's best to use tools that use RAG, like Eskwai or other tools that will always ground your answers in real cases or legislation. Okay, finally, quickly to wrap up, agentic AI is the new buzz. You're going to hear a lot of that this year. So just to help give a high level so that when you're talking to someone, you at least also know what agentic AI is. But it's going to be the hot word this year. And just towards the end of last year, Anthropic released an AI agent called Computer Use. So you tell it to use your computer to perform complex tasks. Google also released their Gemini model, does deep research. You can research online and write a summary report for you. And just actually 2 days ago, OpenAI released their model, their AI agent called Operator that can use your browser to complete complex tasks like book a trip or something like that. So agentic AI is just an AI that performs tasks autonomously for you, like using planning, complex reasoning, and various tools like semantic search, which we looked at. And the great thing about agents is that they can handle complex tasks end to end. And the potential in the legal space is actually quite endless. And so let's look at one use case where, so right now, for example, Eskwai you ask a question, gives you a quick, direct answer. But let's say you have a complex situation. So let's say you have a brief from an opposing counsel, and what you do is you do your research, read different things, come up with your own arguments, and then present that to your clients, right? So you do all these different things. But what if you could assign that to the agent? So I'd say, take it, do everything for me, and then come up with a legal memo or like summarize it in a way that I can give to my client. You can use an agent to do that, where you give it the legal, the brief, and then let's say the main agent here would then come up with a plan, assign it to, let's say, a research agent, which would then do the research using tools like semantic search, come up with a legal memo, and then another agent will do the reasoning over it, and then another agent will evaluate to see whether or not the memo is come up with is accurate. It can refine it, and then come with the memo and also maybe some kind of summary that you can then present to, let's say, your clients. And so, yes, this is just an example for a legal use case, legal research use case, and can use for other things. And this is an example of something that we also building at Kwame AI. All right, so I will wrap up here. Yeah, so today you got a quick high-level overview of all these concepts, and I hope that will be useful for you in your journey as you leverage ways to use AI for your studies, and at some point later in the future when you become lawyers. All right, thanks. I'll end here and hand over to Victor to go through the next step. If you have any questions, we have Q&A at the end, so you can just ask then. All right, Victor, you're next. Thanks. Okay, Victor, you can unmute yourself now.
Thanks, George. So I will continue with just a quick demo of the features we have on Eskwai, and we'll continue with like a practical session where we'll use cases that are more relevant for you as students. So let me just quickly share my screen, and can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so like Doug said, Eskwai uses some of these advanced AI tech to make legal studies and legal work much more productive. It's available on eskwai.com.ai, so you can just go there yourself to try it right now. I'll just log into my account and start with the demo. Okay, so there are three main features that we have on Eskwai. There's a library, a smart set, and Ask Kwame. The library is quite straightforward. It essentially gives you access to our comprehensive database of case laws and legislation. So we have cases way back from the pre-independence era till date. And also in our legislation database, you have all legislation, so both primary legislation and delegated legislation like CIs and LIs, spanning pre-independence till date. So the library gives you access to these documents, and on top of the library, there's the search bar where you can just type, and we provide suggestions while you type, so you can easily find the case that you're looking for. Let's say, so as you type, you have the cases loading, and you can just click to load it up. Once a case is opened on the library, it opens in a new tab, and for each case, we provide a brief, right? So this is something that we know is very useful, especially for students, because you have lots of cases to read. And we provide an AI-generated brief, which you can use to quickly get an overview of the case. So there's a general summary, the facts, the issues, the holdings, principles, history. If there's a panel of judges and there were concurring or dissenting opinions, you have that also highlighted before you actually get the judgments to read. And so that's the library, and same for the legislation as well. Let's say you want to look for Court Act. Yeah, so you can also open legislation, the documents are available, and there's a table of contents which you can use to jump to particular sections that may be of relevance to you. So the library is pretty straightforward. You know the case or legislation you're looking for, and you can search for it in our library. We also have filters here that you can use to also narrow down the search. Now, to the more interesting features, so Smart Search essentially allows you to use semantic search like George explained, right? So this is the search that it's not just keywords, but it's actually understanding the intent of the query and pulling up the most relevant passages from cases and legislation. So I used the example that George used with the Google search about the principle that a person cannot be held guilty unless means fear is established. Right. So you can type in a principle, you can type in a particular issue, or particular facts that you're trying to find that are cases that are related to particular facts or issues or legal principles. Once you do that search, we scan through our database doing semantic search, and then we pull up all the relevant passages from cases. So you can see here, yes, so you would see that it's not just looking out for these keywords, but the meaning of the query is actually captured in these hits that come up, right? So, yes, so the court should not find a man guilty unless he has a guilty mind, right? So this is an example of how semantic search works. You get these cases which are relevant to the query, unlike another which do semantic search. So for each of the hits, you have the details of the passage. You can click to directly open the case or legislation, and we would directly scroll to the portion of the case that was written. So it's here highlighted, and you can read it in context, right? We take ratings to improve the system, like George said. It's the more data you have, the better your system gets. So we take these ratings to improve the system over time. Aside from the general sorting, so each of the passages that are written are assigned a score, which is computed based on how relevant the passage is. So that's the relevance score that you see here. And by default, we sort our answers based on the relevance score. So as you scroll down, you have less relevant passages. But if for some reason you want to see passages from the most authoritative courts, for instance. You can click to sort by court authority, and then you have Supreme Court on top as you scroll down, Court of Appeal, High Court, etc. You can also sort by the most recent if you want just the more recent cases. So this case, it's irrespective of the authority of the court, it's just giving you the most recent cases. If you want a more compact view, you can use the grid view, which gives like a more compact view where you can see much more. And aside from this semantic stage, our smart searches allows us to do kind of keyword-like searches because we know there are some situations where you want to find things that are keywords which are highlighted in the passage. So an example could be, I'm looking for passages where order 17 rule 3 was used. You can do this kind of search. No need to use like Boolean operators like plus and or those kinds of things. You can just type it as it is, and you see here that you have these passages which have the keywords also returned as well. So what we actually use is a hybrid approach. We use semantic search and we also use keyword search because there are situations where you would want these kind of keyword results returned as well, right? So this is the smart search. We can also do similar for legislation. So if you do a search by default, we return both cases and legislation. You can just click to switch over to the tab for legislation. And let me just try a query which is more relevant to legislation. Let's say payment of dividends by company directors. Just something like this. So we do the search and I would look up what what statutes are relevant to this query. So there's the Companies Act, there's the Financial Institutions Not Banking Law, right? So basically, you get to do semantic search across both legislation and cases with our smart search tool. Now, last but not the least is Eskwai. So on top of the semantic search that we do, we use generative AI to then provide a more summarized answer and also provide you the ability to verify the answer. And this is the reason why we call Eskwai a trustworthy AI legal assistant, because unlike other tools, you are not able to verify the answers. Like George showed in the ChatGPT example, it makes up fake references. There's no way you can be sure that you can use it. But with Eskwai, we provide you the authorities that were used in providing the answer in line so you can verify them. I'm just going to use this example. What is the parity of interest between judgment creditors and secured creditors? So when you do a search like this, you would we scan through the database. So right now we are doing a semantic search, pulling up relevant cases and legislation. And based on the hits we get, we provide you an answer, right? So this is the answer that Eskwai is generating. Price of interest, I'll allow you to read it yourself. But the key thing we say is you can hover on these buttons, and these are the references that are used to provide the answer. So in this case, it's this particular case, Ifri versus Osayan Ajaman. And this other one is another case, First Atlantic Bank versus Magellan Limited. It's another 1 year, which is the Insolvency Act. There's another 1 year, the Borrowers and Lenders Act. And for each of these, you can click. So we give you a preview of the portion that was used to provide the answer, but you can also just click see full legislation, where would open up the actual document and directly scroll to the passage that was used. So you can actually verify and tell that indeed this is speaking about what was used. It's actually relevant to what was used, right? And all of the references are also listed at the bottom here, so you can just have an overview of what kind of content was used to provide the answer. For every query that you do, we provide related questions, so you can actually just click to set. So let me just try this one. What case law addresses the relationship between judgment creditors and secured creditors? So we can do this search by just clicking. Okay, I see a couple of questions. Please keep typing them in there, and when we get to the Q&As, we would address the questions. All right, so yeah, so this is the example, and in contrasting Last Ghana Limited versus Mabani 7 Limited, and you see the reference there in George Cohen. You see the reference there, and for each of them, you can always just click, like I said, open, and it scrolls directly so you can read in context. And finally, so it's not just these kind of straightforward questions that you can ask Eskwai. You can actually provide scenarios and ask Eskwai to reason through and give you an analysis. So for instance, you can provide a scenario, ask Eskwai to act as a judge. You can provide a position and ask Eskwai to argue for or against the position, right? So let's say you're preparing for a moot court session and you want to as best as you can, right? You can provide a certain scenario and ask Eskwai to argue for and against the situation. So I just copy pasted it because it's quite long, and I'll read it whilst I do the query. So in a commercial dispute, one party attempted to submit an invoice as evidence. However, the opposing party raised an objection, arguing that the document had not been stamped. The court upheld the objection and the document was marked as inadmissible. Subsequently, the submitting party paid the stamp duty and sought to re-tender the same, but again, the other party still objects. What would be your ruling as a judge? Right, so this is Esquai's response. In the case of a commercial dispute, the court decision to uphold the objection aligns with the principles. Okay, so according to the Stamp Duty Act 2005, an instrument that is not stamped is inadmissible in evidence unless the applicable stamp duty and any penalties are paid. And these are the references to cases and where based on what it's saying in the statement, right? So in the case of Teledata ICT versus Testimonial, the court allowed the plaintiff to re-tender the stamped documents after initially admitting them as unstamped, and then you have the reference to it. So similarly, right, so you can go through all of this, and then based on all of these, therefore, as a judge, I would rule to admit the re-tendered stamped invoice into evidence, provided it meets all other admissibility criteria. So you can provide these kinds of scenarios and ask Eskwai to think through and make an analysis. And all of this is always grounded in actual cases and legislation to make sure that you can trust or at least verify the responses that you get from Eskwai. And this is a really big feature, right? This makes your work much more easier. If you had to do this on your own, you would have to first find relevant cases, gather them together, find the relevant passages from the relevant cases, and try to think through it yourself, right? But this makes it much easier. You can cut down hours of work into just minutes, actually seconds, to get an answer, right? So this is one of the biggest game changers that you can get with Ask Kwame feature. And we also have a history. So anytime you make a query on SmartChat or on Ask Kwame, it's in your history, and you can always go back to look at the answers. So I have several questions I've done in the past, and you can see, you can always go back to revisit your history. All right, I will stop here, and we will switch over to the practical session with Bonsrah, our legal counsel, who is also a lawyer, and he'll do a bit more, and a lecturer as well. So he'll do a more practical session for how you can use Eskwai for your studies. All right, thanks. Bonsrah, over to you.
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. All right. Thank you, Jojo and Victor, for the introduction to AI and then for the explanation on the features of Eskwai. So for my session, my name is Bonsrah. I'm a lawyer and I'm a lecturer as well. I do a bit of teaching too. So I'll try to basically explain how I use Eskwai for my research and how I expect my students to use Eskwai for their research as well. So I'll start with this. If you're a law student, whether you are in the faculty doing your undergrad or whether you are in the law school or even whether you are in the LLM, you are typically doing a number of things. One, either you are writing a dissertation or a thesis, especially for final year undergraduate students, or two, you are answering a legal question or a law question as part of a midterm or exam or something like that. If you're answering a legal question and you're a law student, you typically know the question can be mostly either one of two. It's either an essay type question where you are given a quote or something and then you have to discuss, or it's a problem question where you are given a scenario or case study for you to advise the parties on. Typically, that's how the legal research, if you're a law student, that's how it comes about. So I'll try and explain how to effectively do that using AI, specifically Eskwai. The most important things you need to know is that Eskwai is not exactly like ChatGPT, sort of where anything you put in there, you can get some sort of feedback from it. And another way that it massively differs is that whatever information ChatGPT will give you, you have to go verify it yourself. In Eskwai, whatever answers Eskwai will give you, it would give you the reference points. Like Jojo mentioned in the beginning, for a large language model like Eskwai, generative AI is mostly dependent on the data set that the model has been trained on. And Eskwai has been trained on thousands of Ghanaian cases and Ghanaian statutes. So the references or the basis for Eskwai's answers are going to come from the Ghanaian cases and statutes that it has been trained with. And that's where Eskwai is going to give you the reference points. If I'm telling you this answer, I'm getting the answer from this case or from this statute. And I'm going to footnote it for you in case you want to go read it and confirm for yourself. That's one thing you need to know. Another thing you need to know is that, especially as law students, how you frame the question on Eskwai plays a role in the accuracy of the answers you get. I think Jojo mentioned something about prompting and like prompt engineering, how to frame the question in order to get the kind of answer you're looking for. And I'll give you a scenario where in some instances you notice that a student has been given a take-home midterm, which is like a whole half a page or even 1 page of facts and then to advise, and the person will put the entire facts in Eskwai, hoping for Eskwai to basically answer the question for them. That's one thing we are trying to avoid, because we've realized that using AI in legal education needs to be ethical. And most lecturers like myself, the concern we would have is, yes, great, let's integrate technology into legal education, but let's not devalue the training that we are giving to students. So students should still be able to reason and process the legal knowledge that we are imparting. And we are using Eskwai as a tool to basically not take away the need for reasoning and processing, but to basically reduce the struggle. Instead of going to sit in the library and thrash through hard copy Supreme Court of Ghana law reports trying to find cases, or instead of you to go on Law Finder and search for a case at a time in order to be able to answer the question that your lecturer has given you, we are shortening that process. But you still need to be able to really think like a lawyer and be the kind of lawyer you want to be when you come out or when you get called to the bar. I don't know if that's clear. So we are trying to help innovate in legal education, but we don't want to take away the benefits of some of the things we think are extremely necessary to make very good lawyers. So we don't want Eskwai to be answering questions for students. It would give you legal resources, and I especially like to use it as exploratory. Okay, my lecturer has given me this question. I need to think about it. I need to find out if there are any cases to support it or statutes to support it. And most of us as students, sometimes when you have the question, some of the legal principles, you even know it, like, oh, okay, advise this party, these are the legal principles. I kind of know this, but you need to find the cases. And it happens to us, even in practice, it happens to you that I know there's a case on this. I've heard of this somewhere, I've read this somewhere at a time when I didn't need it. But now this facts you are giving me, I know there's a case on this. And instead of going to spend 3-4 hours in the library or on your laptop looking for it, Eskwai is a tool to shorten that process. So let me try and do a demonstration on how I use Eskwai for legal research and see if it would be helpful to you as a law student. So let me show my screen here. Okay. Okay, I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, all right. So there's this question. Okay. Can you still see?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a company law question, right? It's a typical question that can.
No,
You are still seeing the Eskwai screen?
Yes.
Okay, let me try and share my entire screen and see if. Yeah, okay. So this question 3 is a typical question that you can get if you're a company law student or if you're in law school and you are doing company and commercial practice, right? So Parent PLC Incorporated glue sub limited to manufacture a new type of glue. It's a whole question on its own, right? Now, it says, advise John, who is an employee of GlueSap, whether he could bring an action against parent for the illness he sustained whilst working for GlueSap. And then there's Vulture Finance that had provided some loan to parents based on some false information. And Theresa, one of the promoters of the subsidiary company, who signed the lease on behalf of the company even before the company came into existence, right? Now, if you are a law student, and when we were in law school, Maxwell Opoku used to tell us something that if you're a law student who's worth the assault, as soon as you are giving some set of fact, the still small voice should tell you something. So that's what I meant by you kind of have an idea what the answer should be. But in law, you can't just say this and that's it. You need to back it with legal authorities, and that's where Eskwai comes in. So the company incorporated a subsidiary. They had unsafe work environment. One of the employees fell ill. The answer is advise John whether he can bring an action. In your mind, you're like, yeah, of course you can bring an action. But then what's the process? So what some students will do typically is that they can either copy and paste this whole thing into Eskwai. Typically, you have to come to ask Kwame, because if you follow the explanation Victor gives, something like this, you ask Kwame and then Kwame will tell you the answer. So he says advice. So I've put the entire question in ask Kwame, and I'm going to ask it to advise John, right? You search for it to scan the thousands of cases, retrieve the relevant passages, and give you a summarized answer as if it's like your TA answering this question for you. Okay. So he says the answer is that John, an employee of GluSap, may have grounds to bring an action against Parent PLC for the illness he sustained whilst working for GluSap. In the case of Fiber Bag Manufacturing Company versus Sapon, the court found the defendants liable for breaching both common law and statutory duties to provide a safe working environment. Now, as soon as it says that, it gives you the reference. So you know exactly which Ghanaian case Kwame is getting the answer from. And that's something you won't get from ChatGPT or some of the other legal AI tools out there. And then it's similarly, Parent PLC could also be held liable if it's proven. So in all the principles it gives you, there is a basis for it. You get it. But you all know that this answer is not enough. If you copy and paste this answer into your answer sheet for your lecture, you are not going to get the full marks, because if you say defendants may be liable for breaching both common law and statutory duties to provide a safe working environment, what are those? You get it. So you are going to have to now ask a follow-up question. Okay, what are the statutory duties of an employer to provide safe working environment? So let me try and ask a different set of questions. So if you know how to do prompt engineering, you note this one down. Okay, I need to ask Eskwai this question to get specific authorities for this. Or you can also come down and read the actual cases that Eskwai used to generate the answers for you. So it will tell you Factories, Offices and Shops Act 1970. You can see the full legislation. It will tell you this is the fiber bag manufacturing case. You can either read the full case here, or you can see a brief of the case, which would have the facts, the holding, the issues, and all of those things. It has the legal principles too. And we know that when you are solving a problem question, you are using IRAC, and under relevant law, that's where the principles are. So you open fiber bag, you go on the legal principles, and then you can use these legal principles, expand it in your answer. So the first legal principle is that an employer has a duty of care. The second legal principle is that the employer must fully instruct employees about the dangers of a machine or process and ensure they receive sufficient training. Those are the legal principles that you can use from the fiber bag case in your answer. So that's how it's supposed to work for you. Let me see if I can go back. Okay. And even here, it tells you the areas of law. There's tort law in there, there's employment law, there's personal injury law. And that is because of this first question I'm asking. The second question would tell you that this is company law or something of that sort. So it's imperative how you use, how you do your prompt engineering in order to get the kind of answers you are looking for. And we do not want to compromise the quality of legal education by taking away all the work that law students have to do. In that same answer, in that same question I asked Eskwai, there's another interesting feature where after it generates the answer for you, based on the question you have put in, Eskwai can also generate automatically other related questions and which, if you are interested in those, you click on them and they would basically answer your questions for you. So in that same set of facts, it says, what are the legal responsibilities of directors when signing contracts on behalf of a company? What are the potential claims an employee can bring against the parent company for workplace injuries? So in this one question, You are advising John. Yes, he can bring an action, but what sort of action can he bring, and what are the potential claims that an employee can bring against the employer? This isn't something in the facts, but as a lecturer, when you are marking a script and a student has taken the time to advise as if the student is a lawyer, so it's not just, okay, yes, you can bring an action. If you can bring an action, there are several potential claims. And again, when you look at the answer here, it gives a number of potential claims under the workman's compensation. The reference is there. If the injury was caused by negligence, you can sue for damages. And all of those things are things that you can incorporate into your answer. And it works the same if you are doing legal research, or you are doing a dissertation, or you are writing on an essay question. If you are writing on an essay question, for example, this is number one. Here is one of the questions. Any creditor wishing to have the separate legal personality of a company disregarded must rely on insolvency legislation, as they will find no support for their case within company law today. Discuss. If you put this exact same question into Eskwai, the answer you get might not be as nuanced as if you understand this question and you put it in a more natural language in Eskwai. So when you look at this question that says discuss, you can ask Eskwai, for example, in what instances can the separate legal personality of a company be disregarded? Or if you're a really good law student, you know this is easily talking about in what instances can the veil of incorporation be lifted. And if you are able to distill the question into that simple natural language question, you get more relevant or accurate answers from Eskwai. So let's see the answer that Eskwai will generate for us. In what circumstances can the separate legal personality of a company be disregarded? Okay, so the answer says the separate legal personality of a company can be disregarded in certain exceptional circumstances. Generally, the company is considered distinct. There's a landmark case of Salomon versus Salomon, which we know is correct, but then there are Ghanaian case law that Eskwai will reference for you. So you have these 6 references, 6 different cases that you can rely on. Let me see. Okay. However, the court may lift or pierce the corporate veil in specific circumstances. One circumstance is if it's used to perpetrate fraud. In the case of West African, Koiri and Goodfred, then the citation is there for you to click on the actual case and have it open for you. So the point I'm trying to make is that when you have an essay question, which is just broadly discussed, you need to first understand the various elements that essay question is trying to solicit from you and put those elements instead in Eskwai in simple natural language, and you can easily get different answers. You cannot put the entire essay question in Eskwai and get Eskwai to discuss the case, discuss the question for you in like 2 or 3 pages, as if you don't want to do any work at all as a law student. But this is the starting point, going to Eskwai and trying to have it give you some sort of idea and some legal authorities. But how well you frame the answers you get on Eskwai for your lecturer or on your answer sheet or in your dissertation or write-up depends on you. And prompt engineering is something that you need to fine-tune over time. That's the point I'm trying to make. Another thing you would notice is that for Ghanaian law students, most of the cases and principles we rely on may be from English cases or Ghanaian cases. Because Eskwai has been trained specifically on Ghanaian cases, most of the references you get here would all be Ghanaian law, either cases or statutes. You will not get the English laws here. But for some of the very like locus classicus English cases that have been specifically mentioned in Ghanaian courts, Esquire can fish those ones out and reference them for you in the answer. But the actual reference in the cases, you have to go and read the Ghanaian cases. So here it tells you that the company being a distinct legal entity is established in the landmark case of Solomon versus Solomon. But it doesn't have the Solomon versus Solomon case itself because that's not a Ghanaian case. But it has 6 other cases where Solomon versus Solomon is referenced at the locus classicus for separate legal entity. So you need to keep those in mind. That means that if what your lecturer gave you as the authority for that principle is an English case, when you come into Esquire, you might not find it unless it has been referenced in a Ghanaian case. That's again the point I'm trying to make. So that's how, as a law student, you can find value in Esquire for your legal research methods. Either you are using it to answer a problem question that you have, or like a trial question in order to have an idea of where the legal authorities and legal principles are, or for your dissertation, or even for your essay question. The bottom line is you need to know how to do prompt engineering and how to ask Esquire the relevant questions you need. And the key advice I will give you is that don't put the entire facts in there and try to have Esquire answer your question for you. Distill the facts into summaries and distill your essay questions into specific elements you are looking for. If you are looking for authorities on assault, if you are looking for authorities on negligence, ask those. Don't lump everything up for Esquire to tell you about assault, negligence, and all the different things in the that you think your question has. Break it down, and then you will find value in it. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Bonsrah. Okay. So next we'll go to Kirsten, who is a law student at the Ghana School of Law. Kirsten, I think you can unmute yourself.
Okay, can I be heard?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Good morning, everyone. And thank you so much, George, Victor, and then Counsel, Mr. Abu-Bonsrah, for, laying the ground for how to use Esquire effectively, right? So all I'm going to do this morning, first of all, I'm a law student at the Ghana School of Law, part 1. So I've been using Esquire for about a year now. So I was introduced to it when I was in level 300 in my last semester. And from then on, it has really done wonders to my view on the use of AI in legal work and legal academics. So therefore, it also helped me pass my entrance exam to some extent. And if we are doing the demo, I would show you how I used it during that period and then how I use it currently. So let's get right into it. Please, George, I'm trying to share my screen, but you see.
Do you not have the permission to do so? I think you should be able to.
Okay, yes, I think I have the permission to do so now.
Okay.
Please, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so let's get right into it. So this is generally Eskwai, and Victor and Bonsrah have generally showed you how you can use it, but this is from a student's perspective, right? So oftentimes, the two features I use the most are Ask Kwame and then sometimes the smart search, okay? So generally, as Bonsrah said, you'd have to give Eskwai context when it comes to Ask Kwame. You don't have to just be copying and then pasting, say, a full question and then you put it in there. It will generate the answers for you, all right? But then you are not going to get the answers you actually want, okay? So in George's submission, he talked about a few prompting techniques, like the chain of thought and the others, okay? So oftentimes what I use is the chain of thought, right? So let's see how I use it in my research, okay? So first off, I'm sure in our land law in LLB, we might have come across the case of Kwan and Enyeni, right? Yes, so it has to do with disposition of family lands. Right. So first off, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, right. Okay, so first off, I'll go to my search history, right? Okay, so let me first copy it and then we see how. So I'll go back to it and then ask. Okay, so as law students, generally, the questions we are being given during our exam are either essay questions or problem questions, okay? The appropriate method we often use is the IRAC method, okay? Yes, and IRAC simply stands for the area of law, the issues, the rules, the analysis or the application, and then your conclusion, okay? So using my understanding from the chain of thought, okay, I had to break down this method for Ask Kwame to better understand the context through which I would want to get my answer, okay? So first off, I've asked Kwame here, and please, can we all see?
Yes.
Right, okay, so I've asked Kwame using the IRAC method. So first of all, I mentioned the Kwan and Yeni. So using the IRAC method, brief Kwan and then Yeni. So I don't just end there. I give it context through which it can brief the cases for me, right? So we have IRAC method here connotes or stands for the area of law, the issues, and then with the issues, there is a way through which we write our issues, okay? So we write whether or not, and at the end, a question mark. So that is exactly what I've done here. So whether or not, and then end it with a question mark. Now, the rules. Of course, we know the rules are the Ghanaian case law or statutes that Kwame AI has in its interface. Then analysis, then straight to conclusion. I also still do not end there. The language should be less verbose, very concise, and then precise. Okay, all I'm trying to say here is the language should be very simple for me to understand. And in George's presentation, you would see that he spoke about a prompting method where you would make the AI module think in a step-by-step to get the appropriate answers you may need. Okay, right. So let's just get straight into it. So I'm hitting the search button here and okay. So it is generating the answer. Right, right. So now we have the answer here, okay? Generally, if you follow how the prompting has been done and then the output Ask Kwame has given, it is generally in line with what I've asked it to do, okay? So it has stated the area of law as I asked it to do, and it is here. So native customary law and family property. Then the next one is the issues, okay? We have here two issues. It says here, one, whether or not the appellant, not being the head of family, could sue to protect the family property under native customary law. And then two, whether or not the sale of family farms to cover a personal debt was valid. You know, back to what I asked Kwame, I gave it context with the issues. And you see, starting from where the whether or not is here, it has done that perfectly for me. And then it comes to where the question mark is. So you see, so this is the reason why whenever we are asking AI modules or even in this use case, Kwame AI, we need context. And Mr. Bonsrah already explained that. So it has given me generally the issues. Now to the rules. Okay, so the rules are generally the principles as well. So it says, under customary law, a family member authorized by other family members can sue to preserve the family property in special circumstances. And it also gives me some citation from the case itself. Remember, we asked Kwame the specific case, and he has done that. It has done that perfectly. So it picked the rule from the case, right? So there we have it. Still on Kwame, right? So the citations are given in text, and there are footnotes also below. From Victor's demo, we could see that exactly there are footnotes and then the references it came up with. So let's look at how Kwame analyzes it. Okay. So it says here that the court held that under special circumstances, a family member authorized by other members could sue to preserve family property. And it includes situations where the family property is in danger of being lost, or where the head and principal members are deliberately disposing of the family property to the detriment of the family, right? So this particular answer is in line with the first issue, and that is what we have here. So it has analyzed it and then given down a breakdown of the issue that we asked it to come up with by drawing from Kwan and Denyeni. Then the next one is the second issue, which it has given us authority already in the rules and then has analyzed it. So it says the sale of family lands to cover a personal debt was ruled invalid as it was done without the consent of all principal members of the family, right? So it gives a conclusion. The appellant, though not the head of family, was authorized by the other family members to sue to protect the family property. The sale of, okay, so the conclusion has summarized everything from Kwan and has given us a very good answer, say close to what the courts actually held. However, it is very important that we always fact check, okay? We go back to the case to make sure the answers that are being provided are in line with it, because sometimes AI models can generate wrong answers, but not for Kwame. Kwame, if Kwame is given the right context, it will always generate the right answer. Okay, so generally, this is how I use Ask Kwame. Now, I'll give another very simple use case. So I ask Kwame, what is a contract? So now with this use case, I have not given Kwame any context. I have not given it an example to follow. And I have not told it to think in any step-by-step process, or I've not asked it to think step-by-step. So here, if I ask what is a contract, it will definitely give me an answer, but the answer would be generic. Okay, it would not be specific. Okay, because of the way I have prompted Kwame, or I've asked Kwame the question. Okay, so here's what it does. It has given me what a contract is and has cited the authority. So let me hover on it. So the authority is from James and then Opong, right? And in James and Opong as well, the court cited the Black's Law Dictionary, 11th edition, and has given what a contract is. Okay, so according to Black's Law Dictionary, a contract is an agreement between two or more persons which creates an obligation to do or not to do a particular thing. So this is also an authority, right? So it is in this case that has also given a definition of what a contract is, but I mean, from a different source. But then because I have not given Kwame any context, okay, say maybe what an offer is, as Victor was doing, asking in his demo, I might as well get a generic answer. However, it has also authorities to back it. Please, let's note that usually, if you look at the Constitution, cases from the superior court carry more weight. If I say the superior court, I'm talking about the High Court, the Court of Appeal, and then the Supreme Court. Okay. So cases from these courts carry more weight, but the highest of them all is what? The Supreme Court. Exactly. So whenever you are checking the references, you check it in line with the various authorities to provide. You would pick the highest one in that order. Okay. And with the smart search feature, okay, say I would use a so representative capacity. Okay, so order 4, but I'm sure probably we're okay with the Ask Kwame feature. So with smart search, say I'm looking for authorities on order 4 rule 2. Right. So it has given me, first of all, the relevant cases, okay, which talk about the order 4 rule 2. And then the most relevant one, or the one that actually mentions, okay, this one mentions order 4 rule 1, but I'm sure when we go into the case and read the case, we will find the order 4 2. But generally, as Victor was saying, it's all about the one that is relevant, the most relevant statute or case law that will be in line with your particular smart search. So for smart search, whatever principle you are looking for, it'll find the appropriate case you can attach, okay? And it is in the order of relevance, okay? So the sort filters are here. You can sort using the relevance score being provided, either 100%, there's 100, 100, you go on and on. So the most suitable. But oftentimes what I do is I look for, say in the order of chronology, the courts which are the highest, okay? So right now I found what? The Supreme Court. So while I was scrolling, I don't just look at the first thing that comes. So I find, so there's this case, this is the most recent. Right, so we have Standard Offshore and then NIB. So for that one, we can see that it specifically mentions what Order 4 Rule 2 is, okay? Right, so we can open and then see what the case is saying about it in a new tab. So specifically it has been done here, right? So it says what? In the event that this honorable court finds the plaintiff's statement of claim does not sufficiently cure the endorsement of the plaintiff, then it is our respectful contention that the failure to, okay, so on and on and on it goes. But it gives us where exactly the courts mention Order 2 Rule 4, right? So generally, this is how I use Eskwai, and I would urge each and every one to use Eskwai as well, okay? So Victor has already done a demo on the cases and then the legislations. So I would like to leave it here, and thank you all for joining. So I would hand it over to George for the Q&A session.
Okay, thanks, Kirsten. All right. Okay, thanks to all our speakers. We are currently at the end time that we planned for this session, but we'll still go into the Q&A just for the sake of the time that we allotted. If you need to leave, you can leave right now because of the time we allotted, but we'll still, the speakers will still stay around so that we can still at least spend some time in the Q&A part. All right, so I'm going to moderate that part. You can just raise up your hand and I will ask you to unmute yourself and then you can ask your question. There are some questions in the chat. I think I've responded to all of them, but if there are new questions, you can ask. All right.
Hi, good morning. Can you all hear me? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
You can hear me. Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, so I'm calling from the UK, and this event was shared across not just Ghana, but it came over here to the UK. So it was very interesting to listen to. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not legally trained per se, but my business, I'm always involved in some sort of legal issues and I'm dealing with legal problems from time to time. So this is very interesting for me. I've got a few questions and I was wondering if you could help me. I'm going to speak English because Mitrino and yeah, let me try to speak English. Okay, so my first question is, can I use, it's called Ask Kwame, right? Can I use Ask Kwame app for UK English cases, or is it specifically for Ghana? That's the first question. My second question is, why should somebody use Ask Kwame when there are so many AIs out there that are available that can actually probably do the same thing? Forgive me if you've already answered this question because I did arrive late. So why use this app when there are so many other AIs out there, and some of the other AIs that are available are actually free? And I want to support Ghanaian businesses and Ghanaian apps and tech like this, but I have to have a reason as to why I should use this app when there are other apps that are out there. So I was wondering if you could answer those two questions. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah, so for the first question, yeah, so currently we do not have UK cases and legislation on our platform. that is in the works. So currently, I mean, it will give you an answer, but it wouldn't be very reliable. And so right now we can't accurately answer questions based on the UK jurisdiction. So that would be possible in a few months, hopefully once we have the UK cases and legislation available. The second question about how Eskwai differs. So I guess one compared to the generic generative AI tools like ChatGPT, our answers are always grounded in real cases and legislation. But these tools tend to make up fake references and fake citations, especially if they don't have the content for the jurisdiction you're trying to get answers for. So for example, in Ghana, I give examples of where it made up fake references. And so those are not really reliable, a lot of those free tools. So it's important to always use a tool that grounds its answers in cases on real cases and legislation like Eskwai does. And so we always ground it in real cases and legislation. And also we make it very easy for you to verify the answers that you get. So we always have inline citations for all our answers. And so that makes it really easy to verify. And that's why we call Eskwai a trustworthy AI legal assistant. And so that's why you'd want to use Eskwai as opposed to a lot of the free tools out there. Okay, I hope that answers the question. I think I saw Augustine. I don't see your hand up anymore. Okay, let me just allow everybody to unmute themselves because it's quite challenging finding people. All right, so I guess if you have a question, you can just unmute yourself and go ahead. I see Sly.
Jojo, there are some questions in the chat box.
Okay.
Yeah. So somebody's asking how updated the cases and statutes are. Do you, for example, have 2025 cases? So we try to, I think I can answer this. We try to update it as fast as possible, but typically we allow about a month from when the judgment is given before we put it in the Eskwai data. The main reason being that, one, we try as much as possible to have the certified true copy of the judgments, and those will be the ones that have undergone some sort of quality assurance checks within the judicial service. And we also know that sometimes a day or two, or even sometimes a week or two after the judgment is given, parties can go back to the court for some corrections in the judgment and all that. So, immediately the judgment is out. We can't just rush and put it in the AI chat box. So we allow for some times, but we try and update it as much as possible on a monthly basis. I think somebody's also asking if the AI is able to distinguish between majority and minority opinion, and is there the chance that Eskwai or Kwame will give you an answer based on a minority decision? Jojo, I think I'll let you answer this.
I want to make sure I understand. What is a majority opinion?
Okay. So if, for example, you have a Supreme Court decision and the judges are not unanimous in their judgments, you can have three of them agreeing to rule in favor of the plaintiff, and so they will give the majority opinion, and then two of them, or sometimes it's even four against one of them would give a dissenting opinion or a minority opinion. We as lawyers, the most important opinion that matters to us, or the legal principle we are looking for, ideally is the one from the majority opinion. So in cases where there is a majority and minority decision, and we put that case into Eskwai, would Kwame be able to differentiate between the majority and minority opinion? I think that's the question.
Okay, that's interesting. I'd have to look at the data much more closely, but maybe just as a general answer, to how we provide answers. And we generally provides an explanation or a response based on synthesizing different answers. So it would give you like, okay, this court said this. And so I guess it would synthesize and finally arrive at an answer, but at least it gives, it talks about, okay, this case said this other case said this, and it gives you the opportunity to at least see the ways that whatever you're asking about has been discussed in specific cases. And so at least you can cross-check that. For specifically about majority and minor, I can't answer that on the top of my head right now. I'd have to look closely at exact examples to be able to answer, but at least it gives you a summary of different ways that the issue has been addressed in different cases. Worst case scenario, you can at least go back and look at it, and then finally also compare what answer it arrived at to what you think it should be based on that.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. There's also another question. How responsive is your online support? Should a user be confronted with challenges or need some clarifications?
When you say, do you mean clarification to the question that you asked, or like your system isn't working well?
I think that's irrelevant, but the person is asking how responsive is the online support.
Okay. I mean, we try to be quite responsive during, I guess, work hours. Yeah, I think we're quite responsive during work hours. So I mean, if you have an issue, you can just email. I usually, if I'm online, I tend to respond pretty quickly. So I think we're quite responsive actually during work hours.
Okay. I think I've had instances where the team can get back within 24 hours. I've had instances where the team reverts to you. We are quite a small team too, so I know some big companies within the hour they will get back to you, but please allow for some time. Somebody is asking, okay, has there been instances of AI hallucinations for Eskwai? I think I can answer this, that no. One, because Eskwai is not open for the model to generate an answer on its own. Whatever answer AI Eskwai is giving you is from the data set it has been fed with. And that's why it would give you the reference for you to go and check the case for yourself. And that's why we call it a trusted legal assistant. So that's one of the main pros of using Eskwai. The risk of hallucinations is virtually zero. There's another question, please. When will you be?
So let me add a bit of a caveat.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So I guess when people talk about hallucination, they're mostly thinking about like whether the cases or references will be made up. So yeah, so that's the part that Bonsrah is saying, that yes, the cases and legislation are always grounded in like real cases. So it's not gonna make up. Well, I guess there's always a likely, but I mean, it's always like real cases and there's a way to verify. But if you're talking about hallucination in general, like, okay, is it possible for it to make a false claim, or like the synthesis that it makes may not be accurate? There's still the chance of that with like it is with every generative AI tool. But with Eskwai, it's very minimal because we always grounded in real cases and legislation. However, like you saw in the demos, we always provide these inline citations for you to always cross-check, which of course, as a lawyer, I should always do, or like as an upcoming lawyer, I should always do. So we make it very easy for you to always get answers that you can always rely on and verify and cross-check.
Okay, there's a question on when will you be hosting your next webinar? Okay, so our next webinar is in 15 minutes time for lawyers. This one is for law students. So we'll be doing a similar one for lawyers in 15 minutes. I don't know if that answers your question. Has there been, are there US cases on Eskwai or Kwame or jurisdictions related to the US court system? And two, will there be an app for Eskwai that will make it easily accessible?
Okay, so about the US, well, we don't have it on Eskwai right now. We have US cases. It's gonna take a long time for us to process and put it on Eskwai, but at some point in the future, yes, but I can't promise any timeline right now. We are right now focused on trying to get the UK ones available. And will there be an app? Currently, yeah, I guess there's already an answer from one of our devs. Yeah, so we don't have a mobile app that you download. We don't currently have plans of doing that. But you can, if your issue is about easy access to the website, there's a way that you can kind of have it like a shortcut on your mobile phone so that you can easily go to it like an actual native app. But if you need help to do that, you can just maybe follow up with us offline, and then we can help you with that. Okay, there's a question. So per the answer, doesn't mean the platform is still in the piloting stage if you cannot tell how it gives its answers. No, I guess this is as a follow-up to the question about the majority opinion. No, it's not the piloting phase. We actually have 1.6K users across 120 law firms and legal departments using it. So it's not in a pilot phase. It is really using it. What I said I couldn't answer was that question was very specific. That's why it's a very specific, I guess, nuanced one that I have to cross-check. But it's on the piloting stage. It does give answers to synthesizes different opinions. It's just that specific question that I have to cross-check. Okay. Yeah, if your hand is raised, you can go ahead. I think Augustine, your hand has been out for quite a bit.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes.
Okay. I believe this is a very innovative approach into looking at the legal space here in Ghana. I think in Ghana, the most noticeable legal tech space we all know of is the Ghana Law Finder. And I believe that Eskwai Kwame, with the help of its AI, the native approach is going to be the next thing. I was taking a look at the AI and I realized a few things and I wanted to ask. Generally for me, I sometimes happen to use open AI and all of those things for my legal studies. So certain times when I have an exhaustive number of materials and I want to concise it, make it a little bit shorty so I can read over. I have the chance to copy it and then I make certain generating them. I make certain prompts asking the AI to summarize this, make it in points, keeping the principles and also read the cases so that reading and all of these things will be easier for me to do. Does the AI please have, does the Esquire also have these things? And also secondly to in regards to the shortcut app, the app that someone asked, I think I myself even found it. Google Chrome gives you the feature to be able to save a website directly on your desktop. So you see the icon and all of those things on your desktop. As soon as you click it, it will just quickly go to Google Chrome. It opens that website and all of those things. So you won't necessarily need to have the app, but you can just, its interface will literally look like it's an app, but it is just from Google Chrome that you are using. Because I've been using it oftentimes, anytime I get into a Google Chrome account, it uses it. Now, when I was looking at the interface, the first thing I realized was that it said legal assistant. So let's say I'm a law student from level 100 and I began interacting with Esquire from level 100 in terms of sharing of my notes, making discussions and all of those things. Should that be the case whereby I enter into the Ghana Law School? Does the Esquire have a history platform whereby I can make references to certain interactions I've made with it in level 200 so that I can find certain cases that I interacted with the AI platform with? And does the AI also allow me to input certain class notes and all of those things into the AI for interactions to be done with the document? And lastly, does Esquire come with a DAC team? That's a very, very important thing. Thank you so much.
Okay, there's a lot of questions. Hopefully, I remember all of them. Okay, the first one was about using, I think, for summarization, right? Yeah, so right now, we don't have a way to upload documents, and so I guess you can't really ask questions on a document or summarize. I guess that's also related to the class notes question, but yeah, we're working on that feature. So hopefully when that is available, you'll be able to upload documents and summarize or do analysis on that. The question about access to previous questions. Yes, so we have a history feature. Yeah, so you can always go to your history and find questions that you asked many years ago. The last point I didn't hear. What was the last question?
Asking about does it come in dark theme? Can I change the theme to dark?
Dark mode, dark mode. No, no, we don't have dark mode right now. No, no.
Oh. Okay. Please, I wanted to ask, let's say I subscribe to the Eskwai AI and I'm on the 350 or 150 payment plan, and my 300 questions gets exhausted. Does it mean that for that month I have to wait the next month to subscribe again before I can have another set of questions to use with Kwame Eskwai?
Okay. So you can always resubscribe again once your queries are finished, but we're also working on a way to top up the queries. However, it's very unlikely that you'd finish 300 queries in a month. Nobody has gone that far since we started, so I don't think you should be worried about that. Yeah. Okay, great, thanks. Maybe we'll go to someone else. If there are more questions, you can put in the chat. I see Lee, your hand is up again. I guess you can go ahead.
Hi, yeah, good morning again. So 2 questions. The first question is, so your app is, or your AI is very, very comprehensive. Do you think that your technology is going to take away the creativity and the in-depth research analysis that lawyers use? Because what you're doing is making it extremely easy for them to get information and to do their assignments. That's the first thing. The second thing is, do you think that this technology that you've created, and probably AI in general, is going to make a lot of lawyers and legal professionals redundant? Because a lot of these apps, I've used some of these apps to do some of my own personal legal cases. And what it's meant is, to be frank, I've saved a lot of money. Here in the UK, legal fees are really, really expensive depending on the case. And by using these apps, it's meant I can do it myself, and I've saved myself a lot of money. As technology develops, do you think that it's going to make lawyers and legal professionals redundant? Thank you very much.
Maybe I'll let a lawyer answer this question. Bonsrah, do you want to take it?
Well, let me answer the second question. So I'm one of the few people who believe that if you're a lawyer and you don't leverage on AI would either take away your clients or replace the work you do. And I look at it from, not that AI would replace all lawyers, but if in a year or two's time, you're a lawyer and you can't leverage AI in your work, and you are still billing 3, 4, 5, 6 hours on legal research, the client will go to another lawyer who spends 15, 30 minutes to use AI and finish that research. For me, that's simple economics. And another way the danger comes is if there are 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 lawyers in the system, and previously law firms were recruiting 5 or 6 or sometimes even 8 people who have been called to the bar because pupils do a lot of the grant work and the legal research work, but the law firm now has subscribed to Eskwai or has subscribed to some legal research AI tool, and so really wouldn't need that 8 new lawyers, but instead they will need about 3 or 4. I think there's a bit of a danger there too. But the most important bit is that those 3 or 4 that will be hired or that will be retained will be those who can leverage the AI the firm is subscribing to. So for me, the most important thing for a lawyer now is to get the skills on how to easily leverage AI because the competition is going to get very tough, both in terms of securing jobs and in terms of securing client service. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, it does. It does answer the question.
Perfect. All right. Thank you.
So thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So I think we are at the end of our time. We need to.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So we are at the end of the time. Thanks everyone for.
I think if you have any questions, you can reach out to myself or Jojo or Victor on LinkedIn. If you don't have our contact on LinkedIn, the three of us are extremely responsive on LinkedIn, and we can take the conversation from there. Thank you so much, everybody. All the best, and please share the good news to other law students who are not able to join.
Okay. All right. Thanks everyone. We're gonna have the next session in the next few minutes. All right.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Just mention that we will make the recording available on our YouTube channel, right?
Yes, we'll make the recording available and share.
I think that means you should end this session so we have a separate recording for.
Yes.
Okay, all right.